Rod. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Andzej K, Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum, Deputy Director, a professional in history and education from Poland. And as our whole forum doesn't indicate the titles of presentations, I will ask each of you to introduce the title of your speech. The floor is yours.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation to this international meeting, during which we are going to consider the ways of how to speak about the history of the Second World War and about the post-war history and how to share it. I've come from Auschwitz, the site so recognizable all over the world, which is a symbol of mass murder of European Jews. It is also the place of martyrdom of Poles, cruel crime committed on the Roma people, and the place where Soviet prisoners of war suffered an indescribable tragedy. I will try to convey what I consider to be the most valuable and most important in educating in authentic sites of memory, and also indicate its main guidelines. Also, I will try to describe the requirements that we should meet educating the generation which already belongs to the 21st century. It is more than 70 years after the outbreak of World War II. My speech is entitled Words and Stones. 5 years ago, during the international conference organized at the Auschwitz-Birkenau Memorial, one of its participants, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate and a former camp inmate, Elie Wiesel, said, "The words I am saying here, I could say nowhere else. Not in the same way. Maybe they should be in the form of a prayer, a silent prayer. And I am someone who believes in prayer. They should be a poem, a silent poem, a poem of silence, almost close to Paul Celan." Words, comments, conversations, questions, and answers are the most common images associated with those visiting memorials. Groups visiting Auschwitz-Birkenau, Majdanek, Mauthausen, Buchenwald, Theresienstadt, Treblinka, or Grossrosen look exactly the same. The narration of a guide, teacher, or educator is supposed to catch the attention of those who came to learn the history of the place, or as some educators say, face up to truth about the nature of these places. The words said here by educators take on a special meaning. Behind the historical message, enclosed in specific data, concepts, and names, are hidden words of exclusion, intolerance, anti-Semitism, tragedy of deportation, fear of separation, pain, loneliness, ruthlessness of perpetrators, and hopelessness of victims. The educator's comments contain the words relating to the hope of survival, solidarity, love, attempts to preserve human dignity. such as a strong comments addressed to the very depth of human consciousness and human feelings should not be excessive or pushy. Every word has the weight difficult to assess. Just to throw out the words Auschwitz, Birkenau, as if they were nothing but words, they would be the wrong words. This place, therefore, this space here, which contains such memory, should be a place of truth, for a terrifying truth has been relevant in this place. Formulated sentences should not go beyond the framework of legibility and clarity of communication. The history known from school textbook is illustrated here with the example of real children, women, and men. The educator, in turn, is not only someone who shows and explains, but becomes the kind of a spokesman for the victims. Education understood in this way avoids routine, and its power is derived from the power of the event. Paradoxically, the most important part of the education is silence. Elie Wiesel, often quoted in my presentation, says, "Can I say, therefore, that the memory of Auschwitz is only here? On one level, I say yes, here, because in this place, because of its memory, its silent memory, there is more silence, there should be more silence in this place than words." All the other properly commemorated and clearly described former camps and death camps retain this silent memory. Silence sometimes is an expression of the lack of appropriate, adequate words. Emptiness and silence of memorial sites, the mood of contemplation, recollection, and reflection make visitors reflect on a human being, his role in and responsibility for the modern world. In which other museum can we learn more not only about the state of affairs, facts, concepts, and dates, but also human condition? Where else can we find out more about ourselves? Not without a reason, Elie Wiesel, accompanying my presentation, says, "I would like to believe that one day the famous GA, the GA, which is an annual meeting of the presidents of the most important, the most powerful nations in the world, and they usually meet in each other's country, that they would come here to have a meeting here in Auschwitz. Let them come. They will know here what substance and what is not, what is futile and what is not." Stones. Many sites, structures, material traces of history of the death camps have completely faded away. Mostly perpetrators contributed to this. They had more time. They had enough time to effectively remove those traces out of the landscape emerging from the post-war ruins. Also often, the post-war activities of the new administration led to modifications which made it impossible to read the history of the crimes on the basis of surviving material remains. There are the new monuments in on the different memorial places. The largest preserved German Nazi death camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, is an exception. Over 300 pieces of ruins, including the ruins of the gas chambers and crematoria, 155 buildings, as well as hundreds of thousands different objects which belonged to victims. It is worth mentioning about 110,000 pieces of shoe, 800 suitcases, over 12,000 pots, 470 prostheses, 350 pieces of camp clothes, and 250 prayer shawls. The museum exhibition includes the shocking collection of about 2,000 kilograms of human hair, which was shaven after victims had been murdered in the gas chambers or during registration in the camp. During a few-hour tour, visitors have a possibility to see the museum exhibitions, original buildings, preserved authentic sites, and material traces of the camp. Additional information boards filled with photographs which were taken when the camp was in operation and historical narration help to learn the history of the Shoah. The boards do not interfere in the post-camp landscape but complemented it. Their form serves an additional function of commemorating the camp victims. There are not much left at the other sites, at some of them almost nothing. The modern picture and historical on the same places. Selection in Birkenau. There, however, everywhere prevails the similar silence of the site. Successful attempts have been undertaken to explain and commemorate them in such a way to be able to understand and read their history. Certainly, the former camp at Bełżec is one of such sites where commemorative boards are inscribed in the huge and really impressive monument adjacent to the building of the museum and educational rooms. The meeting, which takes place at the authentic space, the meeting with original remains and words from survivors, testimonies, as well as attempts to find answers, creates a unique and nowhere else experienced entirety. The site is authenticated by words, and words fulfill the site with meaning. It is the reason why we go to Auschwitz, to Ponary, Bełżec, Treblinka, or Babi Yar. Memorial sites and present passivity. Passing time, almost 70 years after the war, threatens not only the material evidence of the crimes. It is more difficult to preserve what is left. However, a motto, "Never again," acquires different meaning. The motto, which became the foundation for establishing museums and commemorations at the sites of camps and mass killings. The memorial site was different straight after the war, when the history of the World War II and the Shoah was a personal experience for both visitors and teachers and guides. And it is different for the generation who knows the tragedy of Rwanda, Cambodia, Darfur, Srebrenica, or the 11th of September. Perhaps this is why an American historian, Michael Berenbaum, writes, "The generation that experienced therefore an ongoing problem has much less easy accepting the notion of never again, and may at most be able to say hopefully, not on my watch." Not on my watch means a possibility and willingness to build, among others, thanks to, among others, education at the memorial sites, the sense of responsibility for yourselves and your environment to other people. Powerlessness and passivity are the problems which people have been facing for thousands of years. In the Jewish Bible, a female slave, Hagar, who was thrown out of her house, wandering around the Beersheba desert, not being able to find water for Ishmael, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down nearby, about a bow's shot away, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. Luke, in the Christian Gospel, about seeking a shelter for Joseph and Maria, writes, there was no room for them in the inn. Powerlessness, passivity, and indifference were common also during the Shoah. Wacław Długoborski, a Polish historian and also a former political prisoner of Auschwitz, writes, not the blackmail and denunciations, not the collaboration, because those were phenomena on the margins of the main current of society attitudes. Indifference, on the other hand, was universal, even in Poland, even in Auschwitz. We were witnesses to the Holocaust. We saw thousands of Jews going to the gas chambers, Slovakian, Dutch, French. We saw the mass murder of the Roma, and we looked upon it with indifference. In this lies one of the tragedy of our generation. Overcoming passivity should begin with confronting fully with all aspects of history of Holocaust, in particular parts of Europe, emphasizing the role of perpetrators, suffering of victims, and passivity of the others. Education for responsibility should become a component of visits at memorial sites, preparing young people for living in a civil society so that the largest possible number of people would be on constant watch, mentioned by Michael Berenbaum. Therefore, young people must be taken not only to Auschwitz, but also to such centers as Belzec, Babi Yar, Treblinka, Ponary. Every visit of young people should be very well prepared. The Auschwitz Memorial, together with the Ministry of Education of Poland and Council of Europe, has prepared and published a special educational kit to help teachers and educators to properly carry out and evaluate visits at these sites. Educational proposals of the Auschwitz Memorial are targeted at visitors from all over the world, as well as various age, social, cultural, and religious groups. There have been developed and implemented projects for school children, for young people, for adults, for the mentally and physically challenged, for diplomats and soldiers, officials and politicians, high school and university students. However, mainly the museum educational program is targeted at teachers and educators because mostly they contribute to organizing visits to Auschwitz and other sites. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that together we will be on our watch in Auschwitz, in Ponarai, Murambi in Rwanda, Srebrenica, or in Gulag Museum in Perm in Russia and other places. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Andzej, for the subtle presentation that could be an excellent example of education. Do you have any questions related to the topic? Benediktas Šetkus, Educology University. Auschwitz-Birkenau is the place well known to Jews, Poles, Soviet soldiers who were in captivity. However, in one of the barracks of Auschwitz, where you have the photos of those killed, I came across the photo with the Lithuanian name, typical Lithuanian name. And I would like to ask you, because of curiosity, do you know anything as to, let's see, how many people from Lithuania could have been in Auschwitz? And how did they come here there?
Lithuania during the Second World War, or as visitors of the...
During the Second World War, as a prisoner.
As prisoners during the Second World War.
It was very little people from Lithuania because the occupation, Lithuania was occupied till since 41 was under Russian occupation. I don't know exactly number, but I can send you the names or all documents they will have in our archives about the Lithuanian prisoners. Okay?
Galime paklausti.
I have a question regarding preservation of memory. I try to collect memories from people who survived deportation as a former deportee as well. Last year, a woman died who was sentenced to death my question is, do you collect memories only from the territory of Poland? I mean non-prisoners' memories. And another question is, whether you are still continuing collecting memories. And another political question is how many thousands of Auschwitz prisoners remained to wait for Soviets and how many decided to flee in 1945.
In our archive about 3,000 testimonies of the first of all political prisoner from Poland, because till 89 we hadn't any possibility to collect other testimonies in other countries, and since 1989 we also collect the testimonies of the prisoner from other countries. First of all, also from Israel, from United States of America, from other countries, and it was the first question. We have also we are collecting now also the new testimonies. They are the video testimonies, and not only from Poland, also from other countries. And the first question excuse me, can you repeat the last question?
What percentage of former prisoners have stayed and waited for the Soviet Union, and how many have retreated to Germany?
Soviet prisoners, Soviet Army, Red Army, liberated in January 45 about 7,000 prisoners. They are, first of all, prisoners of Auschwitz. They couldn't walk with other prisoners. They were evacuated to the Third Reich. And among the 7,000 were about 200 children and also many other people, adults, prisoners. They from the okay, and they were the prisoner from the hospital, from the prisoner hospital in Auschwitz, in the camp.
The last question, please. My question was whether you have the same flow of visitors in your museum, and do you have many visitors from Germany in Auschwitz?
So many visitors from Germany. We have, when we take the percentage of the people in different countries, then we were many visitors from the Czech Republic, from Slovakia, and less from Germany. For example, last year we had 57,000 visitors from Germany and more than 40,000 visitors from Czech Republic and more than 40,000 visitors from Slovakia, and about 600,000 visitors from Poland.
Thank you, Dr. Andzej K.